a different meeting or a different presentation for me this year because there isn't a lot of huge change in the basic crop insurance policy. So when there's not a lot of change, we're going to talk about some of those basics for sure, what's changed, but then we're also going to kind of do a little bit of a farm bill just to touch on some simple basics, and then when Dr. Outlaw comes out, he's got a phenomenal tool to really help. So with that, I've had a number of people ask me, they're like, so what do you think about a Michigan video this year? And I said, you know, after December 28th, when you go to the Fort Wayne Farm Show, people keep coming up to you going, I am so sorry. I know this had to really, really be tough on you. And I'm like, yeah, it was. It was tough. But the one thing, we came through 19, tough year. What we got to do is learn to appreciate all of the teams in the conference and accomplishments that teams can be proud of. Doesn't matter if it's Ohio State or not Ohio State. For example, let's celebrate the school up north. They seem to be really, really happy with what they put in their trophy case this year. And you know, that's only going to go up in value since J.K. Dobbins is going to the draft. So maybe he'll sign it for Jim, and then he'll really have something in his trophy case. All right, no. At least, you know, maybe we lost this Fiesta Bowl, but we still own the school up north, and it's just a wonderful thing. What I do want to talk about today, I want to talk briefly, I want to do an overview of 2019 and just some lessons kind of learned and review it. Hit some policy basics, and then I'm going to talk some about private products building on those basics. And those are the things that have been maybe more of a change here in our area over the last couple of years. And then finally, I want to do a quick farm bill talk. So with that, let's get started, and let's start with our recap. When we recap, we'll look at 2019, and this is not a shock to anybody that lives here, the prevent plant acres that we looked at. And you can see by state, we were not number one. That belongs to South Dakota. They were more than double what we were, but we were second. But I found it interesting how close we were to Illinois. A lot of prevent plant there. When we break it down by county, you can see the area of South Dakota that was really affected. And then you come over here, and lo and behold, look at Northwest Ohio, Northeast Indiana. The darker the red, the heavier the prevent plant. So just to give you a quick glimpse of what it looked like this year, and you know, was this a unique year? Well, here was what we had: 5 companies. We didn't want to give away which company it was, but we thought, you know, we'll at least give you an idea of what the prevent plant was like this year. So we had 5 companies. In 2018, the total national prevent plant claims was 1,600. That became 13,000 this year. 3,500 became almost 24,000. I mean, just staggering. Just in the state of Ohio, one company went from 36 to over 1,000. Another one went from 306 to over 4,000. Stuff that you all know, but I just sometimes want you to understand this was a year that we haven't seen, the companies really haven't seen. Now, I don't have the entire industry's loss ratio yet. I won't get that for a while yet, but the one thing I do know is what losses have been paid out of our agency, just our agency, and we're not everywhere. We're Ohio, Indiana, a couple counties in Michigan. And at the first meeting I did, you know, I'm really smart. You have a handout in front of you with all the information in it, and I asked him, I said, hey, what would you guess that number is? And the guy held up the thing and says, well, I would guess it's just slightly over $60 million. I'm like, oh, yeah. So, accounting degree, not common sense degree, I guess, I don't know. But that's where we're at as of December 28th. That number continues to go up. And on top of those payments that came out for crop insurance, anybody that had some prevent plant knows about the top-up payment that you got, that additional check that came in the fall, and that became because you had crop insurance. So when we look at this 2019, I want to say, you know, this was a unique year, or man, I hope it was a unique year. What changed this year? And these were some positive changes that we saw, and I want to just make sure they're understood. In 2019, RMA, Risk Management Agency, that's the agency that oversees every crop insurance company. They allowed us to hay, graze, or chop for a cover crop after September 1. We had all these acres of prevent plant ground. They said, go ahead, put a cover crop on it. You can go ahead and chop it after September 1. For 2020, we're going to revert back to the original date. You can chop, hay, or graze a cover crop after November 1st. Now, let's just hope we're not looking at all this prevent plant again, and we don't even have to worry about this. But that is the change for next year, for this year from next year. Another nice change, or a real positive they did, and I think a lot of people knew about this, or we tried to communicate it, interest on your 2019 crop insurance premium was deferred. Okay, it wasn't waived, it was deferred until November 30th. And then they said again, hey, we're going to defer it again until January 31st. Now, why do you think that they would defer that interest like that? Why do you think they'd push it back? Bueller? Anybody? Ben Stein, really good in Ferris Bueller's if you haven't seen it. Here's the reason for it, because we had all of these claims, and when you have late claims, that means you're going to have late acreage reports, and that means it's going to be hard for the adjusters to come out to work the claims, and they're thinking, man, we don't know if it's even going to be possible to have all of these claims done by the end of September, let alone the end of November, and then, gosh, we're even going to push it to January 31st. The reason I bring that up, the adjusters and the companies around here, I think all but one of our claims for our agency was finalized and done before October 1st. And the one that wasn't went all the way to the head of RMA, clear as high as it can get, and they actually wrote an RMA rule based on this one. So, and that one's now done. So that's the change, but starting in 2020, they're going to go back to, hey, you have to have that premium paid by September 30th. If you don't, then we're going to have interest attaching. Acreage reports, because of all the late planning, they extended our acreage reporting date to July 22nd. Well, for next year, we're going to go right back to July 15th, which is a date it's been for years. Corn, corn could be planted as a cover crop on prevent plant corn ground this year. I mean, we've all heard of that, right? That's a real common practice. Well, it was allowed this year. Now, starting in 2020, this practice is probably not going to be allowed again going forward. One other thing, and we stressed this, anybody that came to maybe our prevent plant meetings that we did back in the spring, we tried to make sure we went over this change in the rule, and that's that the enterprise unit discount is figured from planted acres, not insured acres. So if you were fully 100% prevent plant, you didn't get the enterprise unit discount. Now, we really tried to communicate that up front as best we could, but I'd still say it caught a lot of people off guard. And being caught off guard is no good, because then you have to go to press conferences and explain why things went so horribly wrong during the big football game against your rival. I guess they're still a rival, right? I mean, my 19-year-old son told me, he goes, I don't get why everybody's so fired up about this game. Don't we just win it every year? I'm like, well, I guess for a 19-year-old, that sounds about right. Couple key changes here. Yield reporting. I'm not going to dwell on this, but I just want to let you know, report your yields accurately. They are really starting to look at it, and they're just taking a lot of time to crack down. If they're not reported accurately, there can be a penalty. One of the things that we've tried to do to help you report them accurately for what crop insurance or what RMA wants, Troy put together a really nice spreadsheet. And this spreadsheet is just a simple Excel spreadsheet, but yet there's a whole lot in it. You can put in your bushels. It'll shrink it. If you want to shrink it to what your elevator is going to shrink it to, you can put that in right here. But then the USDA, he's got it built in so that U.S. grain graders, what crop insurance uses, that shrink will be here. I think it's a really, really nice tool. And if you say, hey, I'd like to use that, get a hold of us. Troy can walk you through it. Matter of fact, Troy's been really good at explaining it. He's almost got me to the point where I understand how to use it now. So he's doing a good job with it. This would be what I think is the biggest change that we're going to see as far as crop insurance for 2020, and that is those county-wide yields. You guys remember the old group and GRIP plans that are based on what happens in the county, not necessarily what happens on your farm? Okay, they're changing how we're getting those yields now, where the data is coming from. So I want to explain that. These county-based things that are going to affect it, one of them is a Farm Bill one, and that's Ark County. So Ark County, one of the FSA programs you're going in to sign up for, that will be affected by this change, as is the RPI, Area Risk Plans. That's your group, GRIPs, things of that nature, and also the Supplemental Coverage Option, SCO. If you talk to me, I said, oh, it's kind of like skinny grip. You know, you're covering this little band somewhat similar to Ark County, but it's something you get from crop insurance. I think it's going to be a real positive change. Now, the first time you hear that, you're like, what do you mean RMA? That's the crop insurance company. The crop insurance company gets to set the yield on my payment for crop insurance? Sounds like a bad deal. Why not NASS? Well, reason being here is that if crop insurance insures 80% or more of the acres in a county, they're going to be really accurate to what that yield could be. And if you have silage chopped, in years past with NASS, that was considered a zero. With crop insurance, it's appraised, we have a yield. So if you say, well, what's the difference I'll see? Let's look at Van Wert County, Ohio. Last year, based on NASS data, our expected county yield was 150. But now, because we have the RMA data, we can see that Van Wert's up to 169.8. They know the silage acres. My home county of Paulding, we were down to 129.2. We're up to 164.6. Big change in improvement, but it's because they have appraisals, so they have a yield that can be assigned to those acres that were put to silage. Now that's a good change. I think that's a real positive change, but let me flip it over and tell you there's a little more to it. With crop insurance, now if you buy one of these area plans of insurance, you have to have your yields in by February. But if you were to buy a revenue protection or yield protection, to the letter of the policy law, you don't have to get your yields reported until April 29th following harvest. So if you don't have to get your yields in until April 29th, it's going to take them a little bit to figure out what that county yield is. RMA might release those county yields by June 15th the following year. So if we had a year like 2012 where you're going, I think I got a really big payment coming to me on these area plans, when would you get that payment? Next June maybe, might even be July. So that's not a knock, that's not a negative, it's just something that I think you need to know and understand. I talked about that SCO, that would also be one of those things that would make the payment. That's what I call the skinny grip. You buy it from whatever level of coverage you have up to 86. Trigger is similar to Ark County that it's at 86%. And you can only get it on farm serial numbers that are in the PLC program. We'll talk about that a little bit, and then Dr. Outlaw will talk about it again later. So if you had an 80% revenue protection, you could buy SCO from 80 to 86 on your farms that are enrolled in PLC. Generally speaking, what we saw around here, Greg, help me out on this. If a guy was at corn, an 80% corn, and he was buying it to 86, what was the cost?
There's about $40 worth of insurance in the county, and the cost is about $4 on average.
So about a 10 to 1 return. So if SCO kicks in once every 10 years, fully, seems like a pretty good deal. Beans was like 2 to 3. So it's a nice option. We're not saying it's perfect, but it is a pretty nice option. And again, what it does is it sits on top of your base policy, your fundamental policy, and then it just goes up to 86%. Nice plan, pretty good. Anybody in here that's one of our clients get our newsletter this year that we send out in December, early January? Anybody actually read it? Thanks, Dorothy. It makes me feel good. I got one. Well, in it, we mentioned that Dick Rice has decided it's time for him to slow down, maybe slowly work himself into retirement. Jason is not a fan of change. And Dick Rice is one of the 3 most influential people I've had in my career in crop insurance, so it's a sad day. The flip side to it is having Lindsay Tim working with Dick in the interim has been outstanding. Lindsay's been around elevators. Lindsay has been with us. Lindsay, how many years? 7 years? Literally, when people would come in with yields and say, here, try to figure out where I'm at, I spent a day and a half beating my head against the wall. Lindsay said, how about if you give me just a crack at it? And then an hour and a half later, she said, here it is, and I shrunk it according to amazing. So that's worked good, but when you have change like that, you have to think about, we have to bring in new people, do something different. So I thought maybe we need to get a different tone and be a different kind of agency, and we had this as an example. If it will play, it is good.
When we asked Reebok to send us Terry Tate, some people thought we were crazy. But I'm a firm believer in paradigm breaking, outside the box thinking.
Hey, buddy.
Break was over 15 minutes ago, Mitch!
And since Terry's been with us, our productivity has gone up 46%. We're getting more from our employees than ever before.
You know you need a cover sheet on your TPS reports, Richard! That ain't new, baby!
Hey, Terry.
Hey, Janice!
But what's really impressed me is how Terry's become part of the Felcher family.
You get high, baby!
He fits right in here.
That's a long-distance call, Doug!
To be honest, I wish Reebok sent us 10 Terry Tates.
You want to play games, Gene? Well, when it's game time, it's pain time, baby! Woo!
So we decided maybe that's not the look and style and feel we want in the agency, but we were lucky enough that with Lindsay working with Dick, then that enabled us to hire Kathy Feasby, who had 32 years at the Paulding FSA. Now, Kathy, in her defense, started when she was 8 at the FSA at Paulding, And so, you guys all heard that. So if I go back to the office, I don't get in trouble. But Kathy's been outstanding. She's fit right in. The one thing we did tell Kathy is we love jokes. We're kind of sarcastic in our office, but this one will get you in real trouble. Don't bring in what looks really good and fill it full of veggies. Not around us. That's not a good plan to make anybody happy at all. Real quick, this is kind of review. We have people that'll ask every year, hey, when do they get the base price, harvest prices? We put this in here more as a reference to you, that this is where we're getting our base and harvest prices on our crop insurance, all off the Board of Trade. Basis has nothing in it. We've also had people say, well, what does it look like over time? Well, here's the corn base prices from 2001. We don't know where we're at on 2020 because it's during February. You're going to see what the base and harvest prices have been. Did it go up or down on corn? There's the same chart on beans. I'm going to touch on this one really, really quick because this is something that was a big deal this year. We had huge variances in our planting dates, wet stuff going in at one time or another. I think it's important to understand unit structure. Optional unit versus enterprise unit. Optional unit is splitting down your guarantees by section as much as you possibly can, versus an enterprise unit says, I don't care where the bushels come from, just get me all the bushels in the county as cheaply as possible. Both of them have strengths and weaknesses. I'm not saying one's better than the other, but if you said, well, what's the difference in cost? We ran this quote, I think, Allie, we ran this for Paulding County, didn't we? Paulding County 2019, 170 average yield, 85% level on 500 acres. Optional units would cost about $39 an acre. Enterprise unit is $20 an acre. So that's a savings of over $9,000 going to the enterprise unit. Now, does that mean it's better? No, it just means that there's savings there, and maybe it fits some operations better than the others. But this helps build on the next thing that we saw. I had a number of people say, boy, I really wish I could get an enterprise unit, but yet have an optional unit feel. That's where these specialty products or these add-on products, it's something that builds on the base policy, can really be helpful. I'm going to go over one example, but they all kind of follow this same example. There's products called Ramp, ICE, Armband, RPP, RevNet, RevBoost. There's a lot of different things. They all kind of have the principle of maybe trying to boost your coverage up above maybe an 80 or 85% level and maybe give you an optional unit feel on top of your enterprise unit. So you can have multiple bands of coverage. You can even have a gap in coverage with some, and I'll explain that in a second. You can have optional or enterprise, whatever fits your operation. Now, when I said there was a gap in coverage, you could say, what do you mean by that? Well, traditionally in 2018 and prior, if you bought an 80% revenue protection policy, you would have to stack your band or gap or band of coverage right on top of that. So you could have coverage up to 90%. Starting last year and continuing this year, if you bought that 80% level of coverage, you had the 10% deductible here. You can now split your deductible. So you buy an 80% level and you can buy your band of coverage from 85 to 95. So one example, again, they all kind of work similar to this, but this is just one example to show you how it works. Let's say we had Ramp, and let's say I have a 55 bushel approved yield for my crop. And I buy the 80% level of revenue protection, and then I buy this band of coverage from 85 to 95. And let's say we had a spring price of $970, which looked really good 2 weeks ago when we were setting this up before. I don't get it. We sign a deal and it goes down. That's not supposed to be the way it worked, but that's where we're at. Let's say we get out this fall and you harvest 55 bushel beans, but that harvest price is down to $8. What would this do for you? Well, the way it works, your approved yield of 55 at a 970 value is $533. You would start to trigger a payment at 95% of that, which is $506. And you're buying it from 95 to 85, so 85% of that is $453. And with Ramp, you have $40 of coverage in that top band. In our example, if I raised 55 bushel beans and Chicago says they're worth $8, that means I had $440 of value. That's below my minimum floor of $453. That means I would get a full Ramp payment, which in this case would be $40 an acre. Well, what happens if it goes the other way? What if I have a low yield? Well, let's keep everything the same. Our 55 bushel average, 80% level, means we're triggering at 44 under our revenue protection policy, our base policy. We buy a band of coverage from 85 to 95. We get out there to this fall and we harvest 46 bushel beans. It doesn't rain in August, let's say. All of a sudden on this ramp band, 55 bushel, 95% means that, hey, if we're below 52.3, it's going to start making a payment to me. 85% of 55 is 46.8. I produced below the floor. Again, I'm going to get a full ramp payment of $40 an acre. RCIS has one called RPP. There are a number of different products out there that all work somewhat similar. Now, there's differences between all of them. They're not all clones, but they are similar. If it's something you're interested in, we'd be glad to talk to you about it. That said, I'm not pushing this. I'm not saying this is the greatest thing ever. I'm just saying it's an option that's out there, and in our area, this has probably been the biggest change that we've seen over the last couple of years. Anybody that's been to our Decision Max, anybody use our Decision Max website that we provide for clients? Okay, I'm really proud of it. I really think it's something that can help all of your operations. You're not supposed to laugh, Tom. It's a darn good website. It's really worth using. The other thing that we looked at is our website in general. We're trying to make some improvements and upgrades to it. Well, rather than me showing you all the Decision Max things, they actually put together a little video for us.
The farmlands of the Midwest have helped feed America for generations. At Williamson Insurance Agency, we protect what is most valuable to you, your livelihood. We've been insuring farm operations for more than 40 years. We provide farmers peace of mind knowing their crops are covered, no matter what Mother Nature has in store. With our Decision Max tool, we can integrate your crop insurance, help you understand your cash flow needs, define your market position, and visualize your profitability flow. Simply put, Decision Max enhances your ability to make informed decisions for your operation. The best part, Decision Max is easy to use and accessible anywhere there's internet, on any device. Contact your Williamson Insurance agent to set up your free Decision Max account. Don't have an agent? We would love to discuss your crop insurance needs. Williamson Insurance Agency, the crop insurance specialist.
What we really like about Decision Max is it gives you the ability to analyze different crop insurance options right now, see how it would affect your bottom line based on your expenses, and then during the year it's a place where you can actually keep track of sales, see how your crop insurance can interact with what you're doing on your marketing plan. We think it's very, very valuable. We do it as a service to our clients, and again, so if it's a client of ours, all you need to do is get us an email address, we can get you set up. Lindsay even did one-on-one trainings several times. I don't think she's going to have time this winter, but she's done it before and it's been very, very good. With the Farm Bill, one of the big things that we really want to do, first thing I think you got to do is, we say second step, I'm skipping some, I'm trying to hit the high points here. Compare your current base yield to the potential updated yield, the updated yield that you could get. You can choose by farm serial number and commodity to update your yields for the programs. Now, we simplified this and oversimplified it a little bit, but you can update to 81% of your average yield from 2013 to 2017, excluding years you did not plant the crop. Now, that's not technically right for corn and beans. It ends up being 81%, but it's times 0.9 times 0.9. We'll show you here in just a second. Even though it's 81%, I had somebody just say, well, it's not even worth it. It's 81% of my yield. Stop and think about it. Anybody remember 2008? It was the last year I really remember that we did not get rain in August, and we kind of burned out late. The beans really weren't great in 2008. Anybody remember 2012? I tell you, honestly, this is the craziest thing I've seen. You know, if you say, well, 24 years of doing this, what was the worst springs or years that we've seen? I would say 2002 reminded me of this spring. It was wet all spring in 2002. We mudded it in, and then the rain stopped. And everybody says, well, we had a drought in 2002. No, we had a cold, wet spring, and we mudded it in, and then it stopped. That was a bad deal. This year, we had a miserable, wet spring. We mudded it in. Guys are telling me about how bad it is. Well, as we all know now, I think we want to plant that corn June, 5th to June 15th. That's how you get 200 bushel corn. Everybody going to do that next year? Just a crazy year. So 2 crazy years, completely different, and look how it turns out. And somebody said, well, what's the best spring you've seen? 2012. Everything went in timely. It went in really good. It looked great. And then it just completely quit raining. I mean, how do you know? How do you figure that stuff? But 13 to 17, we had some pretty good yields during that time, so I think it's going to be worth your time to just take it. Greg, what's the form? A CCC 867? That has your current ones, and then there's a form you fill out to see if you can update it. And I think Dave will comment on that. Yeah, Dave, boy, Dave. It's what is it? An 867. Thank you. So yeah, we're going to have Dave pop up here in a little bit too, because this is going to be very, very important. Get those forms. You can start to figure out what your yield is. One of the decision tools we looked at, Ben Brown from Ohio State put one out. Help you with PLC. This is an Excel spreadsheet. It's got all sorts of tools on it and tabs. We like the one down here that is the PLC tool. And why we like it is you'd say, yes, I'm in Van Wert County. I had corn in 2013. It did 210. Okay, that's what we use here. I didn't have it in 14. In 15, my corn did 120, that really wet year. Well, they put a plug yield in, which for Van Wert's 123. So you get the better of your actual or the plug. And then in 17, it did 200 bushel again. So here you take those three, you average it, and you take 90% of that average, 160, and now you take it times the national adjustment factor, 90% again, to get 144. Okay, that's, last time it was 90%, this time it's 90% and then 90% again. That's where I'm getting that 81% for corn and beans. That's not the same on wheat, but that's the way they do it on corn and beans. So you compare the yield that you come up with to what you currently have. We have your crop insurance history. We can email it to you. Matter of fact, we have a couple companies that we work with that have said, we're going to give you a summary. This farm serial number did this yield for 13 to 17 to make it easy for you. Really, really nice. We can check it for accuracy and just make sure you're getting the highest yield possible, because you might say, well, I'm not even going to go to PLC this time. Well, that's fine, but this is a 2-year enrollment. Remember, what you're signing up for right now is 2019 and 2020. 2021, you might be going to PLC, and then it would be really important you get the highest yield possible. So take the time, it's some paperwork, but you want to get it as good as possible. Why? Because if you don't double check everything, sometimes it can lead to some really bad consequences, just like this husband. I'm having a wonderful time, wish you were her. If he would have just put the E on the end, I think he would have been fine. My wife even said, that's really funny, don't ever do that. And I said, okay, I understand. So I want to talk about PLC. Why do I want to bring up PLC? Because the last Farm Bill sign up, I know that 99% of everybody in this room signed up for Ark County on their corn and beans, right? Good reason for it. Okay, so I'm not knocking it. I'm just telling you there's good reason for it. This time around, I think you're going to want to look at a couple different options. So first of all, there's PLC versus those ARC. So if you said, well, what is PLC? PLC is a trigger based solely on price. It doesn't matter what you planted that year. It doesn't matter what you yielded that year. It's based on those yields that you update at the FSA and what your base acres are at the FSA. And if our national average price is below that, it triggers a payment. So we need to know what are the prices that would trigger the payment. 370 is the number on corn, 840 is the number on beans, 550 on wheat. Well, I think we're at 452 for the market year average this year, so that's pretty good payment on wheat for if you had wheat base acres, and barley was 495. It's pretty straightforward. You're just going to look at it, and here's how they're going to calculate it. So again, the reason I'm showing this, very few in this room signed up for anything on PLC. But Ark County did make some nice payments first couple of years. Well, did PLC do anything on corn? Well, let's look at it. Market year average price or our effective reference price. So in 13, we were at 446. Our effective price is 370, so that's that we're above, no payment. In 14, excuse me, we came in at exactly 370, so that's again zero difference, or we're not below, so again no payment. But in 2015, the market year average price was announced at 361. Well, that's 9 cents below 370. If my base yield at the FSA was 140, that would be $12.60 paid on 85% of my base acres. Well, for 16 and 17, we were at 336. That's a 34 cents below. If my base yield was 140, that's a $47.60 per acre payment on 85% of your base acres. it's worth updating that yield as high as possible because starting in 2021, you get to reelect every year. So it's going to be a real big deal to make sure we keep these as high as possible. Ark County, not going to spend a lot of time on Ark County because everybody signed up for Ark County. I think everybody's kind of got an idea of how it works. It's going to trigger based on 86% of the five-year Olympic average. Okay, so doesn't matter if it's Ark individual or if it's Ark County, it's making a payment based on 86% of the five-year Olympic average price and yield. Support's triggered when we dip below 86%. So some in this room had some prevent plant, and you had some full farm serial numbers that were prevent plant. If you had prevent plant, please pay attention to the next part we're going to go through. If you have everything planted, Ark individual might not be as big a deal for you. Two different people going through the same mud puddle could have something that looks completely different. So why would somebody look at Ark individual, and why has nobody talked about it till now? Well, if you had PP acres, that means you had zero revenue, possibly. That's a good reason to look at it. Or what if I had failed wheat? And this was the funniest thing this year. I had guys calling in saying, I'm going to tear up that wheat and I've got to go to corner beans. It looks horrible. Okay, no problem. And then we got out to July 4th and he says, I haven't been able to kill or do anything with that wheat and I've given up trying to plant it. What do I do? Well, you can harvest it. You can do a lot of different things. It's funny how a year can change so quick. It's like Buckeye basketball season. They started off number 2 in the country. They lost again last night. Go from number 2 to unranked. That's embarrassing. But when we go back to Ark IC, it could be an option. Why is it an option? This time when you're signing up, we're signing up, now think about this, we're signing up for the 2018 Farm Bill, we're signing up for crop year 2019, and we're doing it in January, February, and March of 2020. We have the ability to look backwards and see what happened in 2019. Do I think many of you in this room would even ever consider Ark individual if we were signing up in March or February of this spring? No, I don't think anybody would because you don't plan on prevent plant. But as it turns out, it becomes an option. So let's go through Ark IC. I want to go through 2 real quick basic examples. First one on Ark IC, let's say that we have corn, our Olympic average revenue for corn on a specific farm. These yields right here for corn, those are my yields. I planted corn on that ground each of those years, 13 to 17, that's the yield I had. My market year average price or the effective reference price, whichever's higher is what I want to use. So in 2013, we had a 446, did 190, that's 847 of revenue. In 2014, 15, 16, and 17, 370 is the price we use. We take that times our yield. In 2015, that wet year, 126 times 370 is 466. So we're throwing out the American judge, we're throwing out the Russian judge, and we're going to take the average of the other 3 remaining. So 733, 559, 585 divided by 3, 626 benchmark revenue. Now remember that 626 benchmark revenue, that's going to become very important. So let's go to one specific farm serial number. And let's say that's all I farm. Okay, I have one farm serial number, and the whole thing this year, farm serial number 1, is all prevent plant corn. 100 acres, all prevent plant corn. So when I look at it, there's nothing planted on that farm serial number at all. No corn, no beans, no wheat. But I had the whole shooting match was prevent plant corn. Going back to math class, anything times 0 is 0. So I had no revenue on that farm serial number this year. So let's work through this. I know that I found that benchmark revenue of $626. I know that it's going to trigger a payment at 86% of that revenue, 538 in this case. Well, 538, 0 is less than 538, I'm looking at a payment. Now, how much is my payment? Take your benchmark revenue, your maximum you can get is 10% of that benchmark revenue. So that'd be $62.60 an acre. Across that farm serial number, if that's all I farmed, you only get paid on Ark individual on 65% of your base acres. If you remember on PLC ARC County, I was talking about 85% of your base acres. On ARC Individual, it's only 65%. So 65 payable acres get the full payout of $6,260. That's $4,069 in this example, or across the full 100 acres, that'd be $40 an acre. So if I'm fully prevent plant, nothing planted on a farm serial number, this is an option I think you need to consider or look at. Does that make sense? Let's go to example number 2. And let's say that there's soybeans on this one. So on this soybeans, again, we're going to look at those market year average prices on soybeans, and the soybean reference price is $8.40. You guys notice how $8.40 is crossed off on every single year? Does that tell you, did PLC make any payments during the last Farm Bill? It did not on beans, okay? So that's important to know. PLC didn't make any payments on beans. But we're going to take our market year average price times our individual yields, just like we did before. We're going to throw out the high, and we're going to throw out the low. And the reason I wanted to show you this example, these are actual numbers. $8.95, I had guys say, well, that's going to be the year I throw out. No, $8.95 on 44 bushel beans is $3.94. $9.33 on only 42 bushel beans is $3.92. You've got to go through and figure out where you're at on this. Average the 3 remaining to get your benchmark for this farm or for soybeans. So it's 468. Remember, corn was at 626. Beans only 468. So now, take that first example, put it on a shelf. This is a different example. This year, did anybody have it where you were like, the 100 acres, I'm going to go prevent plant on the whole thing, I can't get it planted, and then all of a sudden it dried up just enough. I mean, I had one guy tell me at the farm show, this is the way he looked at it. He says, I walked out in May, I'm walking on the crust, and no, it's not fit, I'm not doing it. He said, I walked out again at the end of May, nope, it is not, I'm not doing this. He said he walked out about June 10th and he went, I don't think we'll get stuck, let's go. That's kind of the way it went this year. So this is an example where we had 75 acres prevent plant corn. He did get in and put 25 acres of beans out there. So now my little table here, 25 planted acres of beans, 75 acres of prevent plant corn. Here's the key. When there are planted and prevent plant acres on the farm serial number, the prevent plant acres are not used to calculate the benchmark revenue. Okay? Really important. So, not the corn on those 75 acres, not applicable for benchmark revenue. It's all about the 25 acres of beans. So 468, 86% of that, we're going to trigger if we're below 402. So let's get out there to harvest. 25 acres of beans, as we all know, when you plant them June 30th in mud, they do 60. So that's what happened. 25 acres did 60 bushel the acre. We have let's just say our market year average price on beans comes out to be $8.70. That's $522 of revenue on that farm serial number. 522 is greater than 402, so there's no payment. So somebody would say, well, I'm not going to enroll that because I'm not going to get a payment. I'm going to look at PLC or ARC County. Does that make sense? Now, what if I farm both? I've now got 2 farm serial numbers, not 1, 2 of them. And they're exactly what we talked about before. Full prevent plant corn, 25 planted beans, and 75 prevent plant beans. Here's something new. When you put both of these numbers in, you have to get this dilution factor. What in the world is a dilution factor? Well, what acres are we using? We're using the full 100 prevent plant acres, and we're using the 25 planted acres of beans. Okay, remember when we said if there's both, you forget the prevent plant to get a benchmark. So that's what we're doing here. We're using these 2 numbers. 100 divided by 125 is 80%. So 80% of our new blended benchmark is going to come from farm serial number 1, which that's $500. 25 divided by 125 is 20%. So 20% of our revenue comes from those beans. The prevent plant corn does not matter. So we have a benchmark revenue of both farm serial numbers of $593. 86% of that's 510. So we're going to make a payment if our trigger revenue across both farm serial numbers is below 510. And our maximum payment would be 10% of 593, so $59 an acre. So let's walk through our example one more time. 100 acres prevent plant corn, anything times 0 is 0. So we have 0 revenue here. Farm serial number 2, we did plant 25 acres, they did 60, they're worth 870, that's 522 of revenue. So what's my blended revenue? I'm adding the 0, and I had $522 of revenue on 25 acres. 100 acres times 0, 0. Add these two numbers together, $13,050 producer revenue. My shared acres, whole 100 plus that 25, 13,000 divided by 125 is 104. So 104 is far less than that 510 trigger revenue. So you would get $59 payment on 65% of the base acres. And what are my base acres? Now that 75 acres of prevent plant corn comes back into play. You got 200 base acres, 65% of that's 130. You're going to get $59.30 on 130 acres. That's $7,709. Make sense? Is it something that you're interested in? Chris, Troy? If you're looking at ARC-IC, if you have some prevent plant, Chris spent a lot of time trying to put together a spreadsheet just to help organize that, okay? And I remember waking up the next morning and seeing an email from Chris that said, boom, I've got it. So he came up with this spreadsheet, and if this fits your criteria, we want to make sure that you see this and see how it works.
All right, so as Jason alluded to, this can be a little bit confusing, and I want to add a little caveat before I start here. I was talking to Dr. Outlaw earlier. I believe the way we're presenting this is the way it's generally understood right now, but it sounds like there's trying to get some confirmation from Washington, and he may be able to expound on that later, but it sounds like there's still a little bit of confirmation that needs to be done on this. Is that correct, Dr. Outlaw? Yes. Okay. But this is generally the way that it is understood that it is going to work. So what we do is we start up here and we enter our state and our county, and that will pull in some reference data for us to use down below here. So that pulls in our reference prices for the 13 to 17 years. It also pulls in our actual county yields for 13 to 17 that we can use some of those numbers below here, so it pulls them up here. And if you scoot over to the right, Troy, this is where we would enter what we believe the 2019 market year average price will come in at. And these are just numbers I plugged in there. Kansas State actually publishes on a monthly basis where the current market year average price is tracking. So if you have any interest, we can give you that website, or we can lead you in that direction to see where it's at. And Texas A&M as well. So come down here below. In this example, I've plugged in 3 farm serial numbers here that I want to analyze. So the first farm serial number here, you'll notice I've got no planted corn, no planted anything. I just have 80 acres of prevent plant soybeans, and I have 100% share in that on that farm serial number. And that's the only thing I have on that farm serial number. So for my example today, I'm just pulling in the county's actual yields. You would actually plumb in your actual yields here, but for this example, we're just going to use the counties. This will generate the 5-year Olympic average that Jason talked about for the benchmark revenue on that particular farm. And then we'd come over here to the right, and if we planted anything, we would enter what our actual yield was for 19. But since we did not plant that field, it was all prevent plant on that farm serial number, there's no actual yield there. So there's no actual revenue on that one. So we come back over here and look at the next farm serial number we've entered in the spreadsheet. We've got soybeans here, and we've got 60 acres of soybeans, and I've got 100% share in that. That's the only thing I have on that, and that was fully planted on that particular farm serial number. Again, it's gonna plumb in all the county yields in this example. And if you come over here to the right, those beans, they did very well. They did 58. So that's the revenue contribution on that particular farm. And then I've got another farm down here. You can keep going. There's a, I have planted acres in there too, don't I?
On those two.
Oh, he was up top here. Okay. So then I've got another farm here that I entered, farm number 117, and I had planted acres on that. If you scroll over, those beans I have, okay, we did one at 55, one at 58. So we got 2 farm serial numbers that we planted the whole thing on. We got 1 farm serial number that was 100% prevent plant. If we scroll down here to the bottom of this page, you'll see that my benchmark on that diluted of 3 farms was 575. My actual revenue weighted was 305, okay? So if we scroll down here below, you'll notice that that creates a payment rate of $57.51 an acre on 65% of the base acres of those farm serial numbers. So what I want to show you here is just how critical it is to know where you're at on this, because small changes can have big effects on this payment. So Troy, what I want you to do is, let's say on this farm serial number this spring, like Jason was talking, it was really wet, and we went in there and we planted the end rows, 3 acres of soybeans, and we pulled out, we said it's just too wet. I was gonna file prevent plant on this whole farm. But I did plant the 3 acres. So scroll over, let's just say those 3 acres did 55 bushel of the acre. So the only change I've made is out of that farm, I planted 3 of the acres, okay? The rest is still prevent plant. So if you scroll down to the bottom, you'll see that we went from a $57 an acre payment rate to nothing. No payment at all on those. So small changes have huge effects on ARC-IC. And we put this together because when you dilute farms, you start having failed wheat, and typically your farms are a lot more complicated than one crop. It becomes very challenging to computate. So this is an educational tool to kind of help guide you maybe in the direction, and there's several universities that have excellent tools as well. This worked well for us here locally since we're mostly corn, beans, and wheat. So
I'm thrilled with what we've done here, and we're just trying to explain it. And again, ours is just for our educational tool. The reason we wanted Dr. Outlaw, his is the official tool that has been well done. So good way to check and balance. But I tell you, it's just something. If you say, well, I had no prevent plant, well, you might not need to look at ARC-IC. But if you had some prevent plant, we do think it's going to be worthwhile. Final thoughts, make your election by March 15th, and then the sooner you can get in, the sooner you can start working on this, the better off we are. We're going to try to get your yield data to you. The election, and Dave, please help me if I'm wrong on this, but the election has to be done by March 15th. You'd like to do both at the same time if we can, but the yields, we have a little longer to get the yields done.
Yes and no.
Okay.
For March 15th, we have to get you signed up by then.
Okay.
The yield for, if you go into ARC-IC, I'm going to need your yields by July 15th.
July 15th.
For your yields of what you actually got off the crop this year or your 5-year history.
Okay.
If you're going into anything else, you're just updating PLC yields, then we have till September 30th. So in Allen County, and I don't know about the other counties, we are so far behind. We got everybody's appointments made. We're up through March 15th doing appointments. And we can't, trying to get the PLC yield, we're trying to get guys to do it when they come in and certify or a little bit later, because we're not going to use those for 2019 anyhow. We're only going to use them starting in the 2020 year. And that gives us time to try to get everybody signed up into the program. Because even by the March 15th deadline, maybe you as the operator are in on time. If you share the farm, I got to get that owner's signature by the 15th also. So think about that too, guys, when you come in. Even if you're coming in at the very end, If you share, we gotta get your owners or whoever shares in it in there by then too.
Thanks. And again, we're going to take a little break here in a second, and I appreciate it if Dave doesn't mind coming up and just giving us a little bit of an update from the FSA side of it. Now, after those easy examples, isn't this just clear? Everybody completely understand it? Yeah. It's kind of like when I try to go to Burger King to get a Whopper. And they say, well, do you want the veggie Whopper or do you want the regular Whopper? What? Why don't we ever do anything the other way? If you want to have a meatless meat, that's great. How about if that's my cauliflower? That would be what I think would be really good. Let's have vegetable-less vegetables right beside it, and I'll be golden. Final dates, go through those quick. These are kind of a reminder just so you know where we're at. Things that are important, and we keep this every year, communication's key. The more we talk to you, the better off we are going to be every year. Finally, most importantly, I say this every year, but I from the bottom of my heart, anybody think 19 wasn't challenging? This was as challenging a year as I have seen in 24 years of doing this. And what amazes me is how much I appreciate the people that I work with, our staff, our agency. I wouldn't trade anybody in our agency for anything, but working with you. You guys just came through a challenging struggle, grind of a year. It was tough. There was all sorts of reason to be frustrated, to be upset. And yet we got through this, and you guys just kept going. And honestly, it was inspiring to me to see this because it was a year that was really easy to get down. And instead of getting down, I saw communities rally around each other, help each other out, and just get through it. And not only get through it pretty darn good. And I can't imagine $60 million in claims and having it go much better and to have things go so good. And that is just a compliment to the people that are in this room in Northwest Ohio, Northeast Indiana, and I'll even say the southern part of the state up north. The people I work with there even seem to be pretty good people. I don't know how it happened, but thanks everyone.